I met my wife on a rainy evening when the city felt smaller than usual. We were both waiting under the same cafe awning, watching the street flood while pretending not to notice each other. She smiled first. Not the kind of smile meant to impress, but the kind that felt honest. That was always her strength. Or at least, that's what I believed. I was never a loud man. I didn't compete for attention or raise my voice to be heard. I listened. I observed. I believed that if you loved someone, you didn't need to watch them closely. You trusted them to walk freely and still choose you. That belief shaped everything I was as a husband. Our marriage wasn't dramatic. It was calm, steady, built on routines most people would call boring. Morning coffee, quiet dinners, shared dreams spoken softly at night. I never checked her phone, never questioned her schedule. Love, to me, wasn't surveillance. It was faith. When her career began to rise, I was proud in a way words can't fully explain. Promotions came quickly. Meetings ran late. Her confidence sharpened. She stood taller. I told everyone she was brilliant even when she wasn't in the room to hear it. I liked being the man who supported from the shadows, who clapped the loudest without needing applause back. She worked under a man everyone admired. Powerful, influential, the kind of boss people lowered their voices around. I didn't mind. I trusted her, and more than that I trusted us. Jealousy always felt like an insult to love. If you needed to control someone to keep them, you'd already lost them. That's what I told myself. That's what I lived by. But trust, I've learned, doesn't break all at once. It thins. Quietly. The late nights came first, then the canceled dinners, then the way she'd smile at her phone before quickly locking the screen. I noticed but I didn't question. I told myself ambition required sacrifice. Success demanded distance. Love understood that. Sometimes she'd come home exhausted but distant, as if part of her was still somewhere else. When I asked how her day went, the answers grew shorter, less detailed, more guarded. Still, I smiled. Still, I believed. Because real love shouldn't feel like suspicion. The invitation arrived on a Thursday morning. Thick paper, gold lettering, a corporate gala celebrating the company's success. Spouses invited. Formal attire required. She was excited. I could see it in her eyes. She held the envelope like it meant something more than a party. "You'll come, right?" she asked. I nodded without hesitation. Why wouldn't I? I was her husband, her partner, the man who trusted her completely. That night, as she planned her dress and talked about the venue, I watched her from the doorway. She looked alive, ambitious, beautiful, and for the first time in a while, slightly out of reach. Still, I told myself the same thing I always did. Love doesn't need guarding. I had no idea that night would test every belief I'd ever held. On the evening of the gala, I adjusted my suit in the mirror and felt something close to pride. Not fear, not doubt, pride. This was her world now and I was honored to stand beside her in it. As we walked into the hotel ballroom, lights glittering and music humming low, I believed this night was a celebration, a milestone, proof that trust, patience, and love were enough. I didn't know I was walking into the moment where trust would stop feeling like love and start feeling like loss. The ballroom looked like something borrowed from another world. Crystal chandeliers floated above us, scattering warm light across polished marble floors. The air smelled faintly of champagne and expensive perfume. Laughter drifted in soft waves, carefully measured and rehearsed, the kind people use when they know they're being watched. Every detail whispered success. I stayed close to my wife as we entered, my hand resting lightly at the small of her back. She belonged here. I could see it in the way she carried herself, confident, graceful, admired. Heads turned, smiles followed. People greeted her by name. I felt proud standing beside her, even as I felt slightly out of place in a room that spoke a language I was still learning. Then I noticed him. Rohan Verma didn't need an introduction. The room seemed to tilt toward him naturally, like gravity had chosen a favorite. Conversations paused when he passed. Laughter grew louder. Shoulders straightened. Even the waiters moved faster around him. Power clung to him in a way that didn't require effort. I watched people greet him, two-handed handshakes, deferential smiles, eager nods. When he spoke, others leaned in. When he laughed, they followed. I didn't feel threatened. Not yet. I felt curious. This was the man everyone admired, the man who signed paychecks and shaped futures. When he finally approached us, his smile was polished and effortless. "So this must be the husband," he said, extending his hand to me. His grip was firm, controlled. His eyes flicked over me quickly, assessing, dismissing, moving on. The smile never left his face. "I've heard a lot about you," he added, though his tone suggested he hadn't heard anything worth remembering. "Only good things, I hope," I replied. He chuckled softly. Of course, polite, perfectly civil, and somehow deeply condescending. As he turned his attention to my wife, something subtle shifted. Her posture changed. Her shoulders relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. She laughed more freely. Her eyes stayed on his a little longer than necessary. It wasn't dramatic, just enough to notice if you were watching closely. I told myself it was admiration, professional respect, nothing more. Music swelled through the room as servers glided between guests, refilling glasses. A live band adjusted their instruments on stage. The evening grew louder, warmer, more fluid. People loosened their ties. Shoes were kicked off discreetly under tables. Success was being celebrated, and everyone wanted to feel part of it. Rohan raised his glass during a brief speech, praising teamwork and loyalty. Applause filled the room. My wife clapped enthusiastically, her eyes shining. I joined in, though something inside me had begun to tighten quietly, without explanation. When the band shifted tempo, the lights dimmed slightly. A slower song rolled across the ballroom, smooth and inviting. Conversations faded as couples began to move toward the dance floor. I felt my wife's hand slip from my arm. "I'll be right back," she said, already stepping away. I watched as Rohan offered his hand to her. The gesture was casual, confident, as if it had been decided long before the music started. She hesitated for half a second. Then she smiled and took his hand. The room applauded. My chest tightened. They moved onto the dance floor together, framed by warm lights and approving eyes. People smiled as if witnessing something charming, something harmless. But I stood frozen, my hands at my sides, watching the woman I trusted step into another man's arms. The music played on, and I realized the room hadn't changed. At first, I told myself it was nothing. A slow song, a polite gesture, two professionals sharing a moment in front of colleagues. That's what it looked like if you wanted it to. If you needed it to be harmless. But then I watched the distance between them disappear. Rohan placed one hand at my wife's waist, not where strangers keep their hands, but where familiarity lives. She didn't flinch. She didn't adjust. Instead, she stepped closer, as if the space between them had been inconvenient. Their movements matched too easily, like they'd practiced this without music before. They weren't dancing for the room. The room had faded for them. I stood there, my glass untouched, my heartbeat loud in my ears. People nearby pretended not to stare, but their eyes drifted again and again toward the dance floor. A few exchanged knowing looks, a few smiled uncomfortably. No one said a word. Public silence can be crueler than accusation. I searched her face for something: hesitation, guilt, awareness. I found none. She looked relaxed, happy, lighter than she'd looked at home in weeks. Each time she laughed, Rohan leaned in slightly, his mouth near her ear, his voice lost beneath the music. She laughed the way she used to laugh, only with me. That was the moment something inside my chest gave way. Still, I argued with myself. Am I overreacting? It's just a dance. Don't embarrass her. Don't embarrass yourself. Jealousy had always felt beneath me. I prided myself on being the man who trusted, the man who didn't need reassurance. But what I was watching didn't feel like jealousy. It felt like being slowly erased. Their bodies swayed closer, too close. Her hand rested on his shoulder, fingers relaxed. Familiar. Not tense, not formal. Familiar. I scanned the room again. People noticed, of course they did. A powerful man dancing intimately with a married employee wasn't invisible. But power has a way of quieting judgment. Smiles stayed polite. Conversations resumed in lowered tones. Discomfort was swallowed whole. No one would intervene. Not here. I looked for her eyes. When I finally found them, they weren't looking for me. They were locked on his. There was no panic there. No apology. Just connection. A silent understanding passing between them. In the open, while I stood a few feet away, invisible. I waited for her to glance over. To remember me, to soften, to pull away. She didn't. The song ended to warm applause. Rohan said something that made her laugh again, soft and unguarded. He released her slowly, his hand lingering just a fraction longer than necessary. She didn't step back immediately. I remained still, giving her space to choose. She turned not toward me but toward the crowd, accepted a compliment, smiled at someone else. The moment stretched, then she walked past me. Not a glance, not a word, not even the courtesy of acknowledgement. She followed him toward the edge of the ballroom, disappearing briefly behind a column as conversation swallowed them whole. My seat beside me remained empty. That was when the room felt colder. The music picked up again. Another song. Another distraction. Laughter returned to full volume, as if nothing unusual had happened, but something had fractured, quietly, in plain sight. I didn't follow her. I didn't call her name. I stayed where I was, staring at the empty space she'd left behind. Realizing the dance hadn't crossed a line because of where his hands were. It crossed the line because she didn't come back. I told myself she'd be back any second. People step away at events like this all the time. A phone call, a quick conversation, a moment to breathe. I stayed in my seat, my hands folded, my eyes drifting toward every entrance like a habit I couldn't break. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The chair beside me stayed empty, its silence louder than the music. I checked my phone. No message. No missed call. I typed her name once, then erased it before hitting send. I didn't want to be the man who chased them out yet. Around me, conversations shifted. Voices lowered when I walked past. Laughter stumbled mid-sentence. I caught fragments of whispers that stopped as soon as they noticed me listening. People knew something was wrong. They just didn't know what to do with it. Waiters avoided my table now. Where they'd once offered refills with easy smiles, they suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere. One cleared plates that didn't need clearing. Another nodded quickly and moved on. Discomfort spreads faster than truth. I stood and adjusted my jacket, telling myself I was just stretching my legs. The The balcony was quiet, overlooking the city lights. Couples leaned against the railing, close and private. I scanned every face. She wasn't there. The hallway outside the ballroom echoed faintly with footsteps and distant laughter. I checked the restrooms, the lounge area. Nothing. Each empty space tightened something inside my chest. I reached the elevators and stood there longer than I should have, watching doors open and close, hoping she'd step out and laugh at my imagination. She didn't. I returned to the ballroom, my senses sharpened, my patience thinning. The band played on. Glasses clinked. Applause erupted somewhere near the stage. The world continued, indifferent. That's when a young staff member caught my eye. He was hovering near the exit, adjusting his tie nervously. When our eyes met, he hesitated. "Excuse me?" I said softly. "Did you see a woman in a blue dress? She was dancing earlier." He swallowed, looked past me, then nodded once. "She left," he said. "With him?" I didn't ask who. I thanked him and stepped away before my voice could betray me. I didn't need evidence anymore. Respect had already left. I stood near a pillar, watching the crowd as if through glass. Faces blurred, sounds dulled. In my mind, memories replayed differently now lit nights. Sudden distance, smiles that didn't reach her eyes. The truth didn't arrive like a shock. It settled like confirmation. I wasn't angry yet. Anger requires energy. What I felt was heavier, a hollow clarity. I realized then that betrayal isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it happens while people clap and drink and pretend not to see. I checked my phone again. Still nothing. The stage lights brightened, pulling attention forward. An announcer's voice cut through the room, cheerful and rehearsed. "And now," he said, "we'll hear from someone who played an important role in tonight's success." Applause started before he even finished the sentence. I glanced up at the large screen behind the stage. My name appeared in bold letters. For the first time that night, my heartbeat steadied. Whatever had just been taken from me didn't matter anymore. Because the room was about to listen, I didn't cry. The realization surprised me. I had always assumed betrayal would shatter me loudly, that my knees would buckle, that anger would rise hot and uncontrollable. Instead, something quieter happened. The pain sharpened into focus, then settled, like a storm passing just far enough away to leave the air clear. I stayed where I was. I didn't run after her, didn't demand answers, didn't humiliate myself by chasing a truth that had already revealed itself. Whatever explanation she had would come later, or not at all. In that moment, I understood something with unsettling clarity. Confronting her privately would only give her the chance to rewrite the story, and I wasn't interested in versions anymore. Around me, the room gathered itself for the next part of the evening. Chairs turned toward the stage. People refilled their glasses. The band quieted. A collective anticipation settled in, polished and expectant. They had no idea how much weight hung in the air. I thought about dignity. There's a difference between being hurt and being humiliated. Hurt is unavoidable when someone you love chooses another path. Humiliation only happens when you abandon yourself trying to hold on to them. I wasn't going to do that. I remembered every time I'd chosen trust over control. Every time I'd believed silence was maturity, not weakness. I had lived my values honestly, and that mattered. If there was going to be an ending to this chapter, it would be written on my terms. Some people break down, others wake up. The announcer returned to the microphone, his voice smooth and confident. He spoke about teamwork, commitment, integrity, words that floated easily in a room built on appearances. I listened, calm now, almost detached. Then he said my name again. This time, the applause was louder. People turned to look at me as I made my way forward. I felt their curiosity more than their admiration. Some recognized me as her husband, others simply saw another man in a suit. None of them knew what I knew. Each step toward the stage felt deliberate, grounded. I wasn't shaking. My hands were steady. The fear I expected never came. What filled the space instead was resolve. I thought about how easy it would be to shout, to expose everything in a rush of emotion. But noise doesn't always carry truth. Sometimes the quietest voice cuts the deepest. I reached the stairs and paused briefly, letting the moment stretch, letting the room settle, letting the weight of their attention rest fully on me. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming myself. The lights warmed as I stepped onto the stage. Faces blurred into a single audience, waiting, expectant, unaware. I took a breath, and for the first time that night, I felt in control. The microphone felt cool in my hand. For a moment, I simply stood there, letting the applause fade on its own. Silence has weight when you don't rush to fill it. I learned that then. Faces lifted toward me, expectant, polite, unaware of the line they were about to cross with me. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. "To the company, the organizers, and everyone here tonight." A few nods, more applause. I continued, measured. This evening is about success, about dedication, about the values we claim to stand for: loyalty, trust, respect. I let those words linger. They always sound good in a ballroom. I've always believed, I went on, that trust isn't something you demand. It's something you offer freely, hoping it's returned with the same care. The room was quiet now, not uncomfortable yet, just attentive. "I came here tonight proud," I said. Proud of my wife, proud of the work she's done, proud to stand beside her in a room like this. A few people shifted in their seats. But sometimes, I added, pride turns into clarity. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't point. I didn't name anyone. I didn't need to. Earlier this evening, I said, my wife shared a dance with a colleague. A moment that was applauded, admired, and publicly accepted. A ripple moved through the crowd, subtle, like a breath being held. After that dance, I continued, she left the event with him. No drama, no embellishment. Just fact. She didn't return to her seat. She didn't return to me. The silence sharpened. I'm not here to assign blame, I said. I won't accuse, I won't speculate. Behavior speaks loudly enough on its own. I could feel it now, the shift. People sat straighter. Eyes darted. Smiles faded. The room, once warm and celebratory, felt exposed. I believe respect is what remains when love is tested, I said. And tonight, I learned exactly where I stand. I paused. Let them sit with it. I didn't lose my wife that night, I said finally. She lost her place in my life. The words landed without force. And somehow, that made them heavier. No applause followed. No gasps. Just stunned quiet. Even the band stayed still, hands hovering over instruments they wouldn't play. I nodded once, a small gesture of closure. Thank you for listening. As I stepped back from the microphone, the doors at the rear of the ballroom opened, and the room turned. No one clapped. The silence that followed was heavier than any applause could have been. It spread slowly, filling the corners of the ballroom, settling into every glass raised halfway to a mouth. People looked at one another, unsure of what reaction was acceptable now. Smiles disappeared. Conversations stopped mid-breath. Shock has a sound. It's quiet. I stepped away from the stage, the microphone left behind like a chapter already finished. Eyes followed me, not with admiration, not with anger, but with something closer to discomfort. I had said what everyone had seen but refused to name, and now they had to sit with it. Across the room, I saw Rohan for the first time since the dance. The man who once owned the room now looked smaller inside it. His posture was stiff, his smile forced and brittle. A few people who had been orbiting him earlier drifted away, suddenly fascinated by their phones or the exit signs. Power, I realized, survives on reflection. Once people stop reflecting it, it fades quickly. Whispers returned, but they had changed direction. My wife stood near the doors, her face pale, her confidence gone. The attention she'd enjoyed earlier had turned sharp. People weren't admiring her now, they were measuring her. The protection she thought power offered had dissolved the moment truth entered the room. Our eyes met briefly. She looked like she wanted to say something, to explain, to apologize, to reclaim a version of herself that no longer existed. I didn't wait. I walked past her without stopping. Not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. There was nothing left to negotiate. As I moved through the ballroom, conversations resumed behind me in uneven fragments. I caught pieces of sentences, my name, his title, her dress, but none of it touched me anymore. What mattered had already been said. Outside, the night air was cool and steady. The city lights didn't care about scandals or speeches, they just existed. I took a breath and felt something unexpected settle into my chest. Relief. For the first time in weeks, maybe day longer, wasn't carrying questions. I wasn't wondering if I was enough, or if I should have done more. I had honored my values, I had protected my dignity, and that mattered more than any relationship built on silence. I thought about how easy it would have been to stay quiet, to swallow the humiliation and pretend nothing had changed. Many people do. They confuse endurance with strength. But strength, I had learned, is knowing when to leave. Walking away wasn't defeat. It was freedom. Behind me, the gala continued, awkwardly, cautiously, forever altered. Inside that room, power had shifted. Truth had redefined it, and I was no longer part of the equation. I reached my car and paused, one hand on the door, reflecting on the version of myself who had walked into that ballroom hours earlier. The man who believed trust alone could protect love. He wasn't wrong, he was just incomplete. I turned the key, the engine humming softly, and drove away, not broken, not bitter, but awake. And now, if you're reading this, let me ask you something. I drove through the city streets, the night quiet except for the hum of tires on asphalt. Streetlights reflected on the windshield, fragments of gold and white flashing like reminders that life goes on, whether you want it to or not. I thought about the evening, the gala, the dance, the empty chair beside me, and I realized that the story isn't just about betrayal. It's about the lessons that betrayal teaches. If you're willing to see them, love without boundaries invites betrayal. I believed love could survive anything if you trusted enough, if you gave enough. I was wrong. Trust is precious, but it is not armor. When someone steps outside the lines of respect and loyalty, love alone cannot stop them. The dance, the disappearance, the whispers, they were proof that love without boundaries doesn't protect you. Only self-respect does. Silence is not weakness. It's discipline. So many would have reacted with shouting, confrontation, or revenge. Many might have gone straight to the ballroom doors. Public shame in mind? I didn't. I didn't tea because I understood something few people ever realize. Speaking ice and tea always power. Sometimes, silence is what sharpens it. By choosing to wait, to observe, and to act only when the stage was mine, I controlled the narrative. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to accuse. I simply let the truth speak for itself. And when it did, it landed harder than any insult could have. Respect, once broken, rarely returns. I won't lie and say I expected her to change. I won't pretend that seeing her smile with him was just a misunderstanding. That smile, that closeness, was a boundary crossed. And boundaries, once broken, do not rebuild themselves with apologies alone. The respect I had for her, the trust I had placed in our bond, was gone. There was no reclaiming it. There was only acknowledgement and the decision to walk away. Walking away can be the strongest revenge. The world expects drama, confrontation, tears, but what hits harder than all of that is calm. It's dignity. It's self-control. It's leaving a situation fully aware that you will not compromise your worth for anyone who does not honor it. When I walked away that night, I did not feel emptiness. I felt release. I felt power. I had nothing to prove. I had only my integrity. And that was enough. If you're listening or reading, let me be direct. Life will test your trust. People will betray you in ways subtle and devastating. They will cross lines you never thought they would. And yes, it will hurt. It will feel like the world is laughing at your choice to be faithful, kind, or patient. But here is the truth. Your reaction is your power. You can choose to fight noise with noise, or you can fight chaos with clarity. You can choose to break, or you can choose to wake up. Ask yourself this. Have you ever stayed silent while someone underestimated you? Have you ever known betrayal and wondered if confrontation was worth the cost? Would you expose lies and risk the fallout, or would you walk away with your dignity intact, letting the truth do the work for you? Comment, silence, if you believe self-respect matters more than revenge. Share this if you know someone who has faced betrayal quietly and still walked away with their head held high. And remember this, being calm, being patient, being dignified, it doesn't mean you're weak. It means you are unstoppable. Because in the end, it's not the people who betray you who define your story. It's the choices you make afterward. And the strongest choice you can make is to refuse to lose yourself. I didn't lose my wife that night. She lost her place in my life. And in that loss, I found something far more valuable: freedom, self-respect, and the unshakable knowledge that some battles aren't meant to be fought, they're meant to be survived, and survived with your dignity intact.